with the moon being just a few days away from full, the sky was pretty darn hazy. I couldn't really do a whole lot of observing of the deep sky stuff. So I decided to point the telescope over to the moon and kind of see what I could see. Um, uh, looking along the surface and all of that, I came across Aristarchus and Herodotus craters, two craters that have like a very interesting contrast. One of them is very white and bright, and the other one is really dark. So I thought it would be kind of fun to sketch these out. And in between the two of them is Schroeder's Valley, which was another interesting bit of object on the moon that I thought would be fun to play around with. So starting out, I began by just kind of laying out the general shapes of stuff. I believe that's Aristarchus up there on the top, and the valley down below, and that V shape, the upside down V, which had like a canyon type shape, which crested into Herodotus. So just taking my time to draw out all of the main features here loosely, just enough to kind of get a general idea of where these things are, make sure that the placement is feeling right. I mean, to be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of drawing in my recent years. I went to art school, some 20 plus years back. And so I have had a history of illustration, but not really current experience. Almost all of the work that I do these days creatively is on the computer. To get some of the just general overall feel in terms of the lightness of the moon, I decided to take a little Conte shaving dust and throw it onto the smudge tool there, get a general sense of the shading throughout the section that I was drawing now that I knew about what the objects were that I wanted to sketch. Usually what I do is I'll first load up the smudge tool with this powder, get it on generally, and then I'll flip the smudge tool around so it's a clean side, and then use the clean side to just kind of smush it all into the page, try and get the smoothness and the texture that I'm looking for. From here, like all of those lines that I was starting to define there got really blurry, which is fine because I feel like that first test or the first drawings down were almost like, well, this is kind of where everything should be, but it's kind of nice to do a second pass and refine the shaping just a little bit more after that initial sketch through. It is nice using a material like this that you can erase, especially after having an undo on the computer, which generally is well, a little bit easier to mask your mistakes now. And one of the things that I'm starting to discover doing a few of these moon sketches now is that I find that I have a tendency to draw what I see as opposed to what's actually there, maybe a bit more than I should. It's something that I'm trying to lean away from. What I mean by that is like, you see a light spot and you see a dark spot next to it, and it's easy to just kind of draw that shape of whatever that light spot is down. But in actuality, that light spot isn't just a light spot, right? It's the sun casting against some sort of object. And so whenever I then do kind of shift my mind and thinking to making that light spot not just be a light spot and that kind of flat 2D shape that I'm seeing, and do more of a uh, uh, factual representation of what the actual object is that I'm seeing there, the sketches generally turn out a little bit better in terms of moon stuff. And it's been an interesting challenge too, also, to just try and figure out what the heck these things are. Like, is it a depression or is it a mountain? Is it a flat spot that just has a different color? of whatever the material is on the ground there. So getting to this section here and just showing a little bit of the technique of defining the shapes a little bit more. Within the darker crater here, there's also a more subtle crater kind of just off to the side. So I wanted to kind of specify exactly where that was as well. It seems like there are some remnants of other craters in the area as well. So just getting all of those defined in there based off of the light castings. So overall, I feel like it was starting to get to a place where things were feeling about right in terms of where all the general placements were of everything. It did feel like now, though, that maybe the brightness of the surface wasn't quite as bright as I wanted it to be, though. So starting to getting into some cross hatching and just putting in some lighter shading through here to kind of just texturize the surface a little bit, get it a little bit lighter, and then also starting to specify where those light and dark sections are within these flatter areas of the sketch. I like doing cross hatching. I like textures in general, maybe a more stylized approach. My background primarily when I'm doing drawing is with pen, and so having pencil and the more subtle shading that's available to you is not really my go-to. I guess there's something about the messiness and the grittiness of a pencil or a pen line that I really appreciate. Or maybe it just is masking all of my mistakes, I don't know. For this sketch, I was using TMB planetary 7mm eyepiece in the daub. It's one that I had just picked up from a guy who was selling a whole bunch of stuff that his dad used to have. It was just a big box full of eyepieces, and so far I feel like it's been pretty nice to use. It's oddly soft, but not unsharp. This section here was interesting where in initial views it was really pretty flat, but there were some pretty defined like kind of undulations of waves of light and dark. And then in the center part here, this was particularly interesting because I feel like over the course of the half an hour or so that I was drawing this section, the amount that the sunlight changes on the moon is pretty drastic. And especially when you have areas where there are low-lying shadows, they can cast very differently from one minute to the next. And so I was finding myself chasing a little bit in terms of like figuring out, well, it wasn't like this before, but should I put it in now, type thing. Defining some of the textures in the darker crater there as well. And then you can see I kind of switched to my angle of the cross hatching here to do a kind of a 45 degrees or so on the initial cross hatching. Part of that is to just create a secondary layer of texture. You keep everything on the same plane in terms of the cross hatching, and it starts to build up in a way that you can easily create lines that you're not really intending. So I find that like switching it up and then holding it in sort of this other side for a while can be pretty helpful in terms of just getting kind of like an overall feeling of the light and dark, but without going too far into just a single side of it all. I think around this point too, I thought I kept getting these fleeting glimpses that I was drawing like a cat with an eye patch on the face, which was kind of distracting. But ignoring the eye patch cat, just trying to get into some more of the final shading details. Now that I knew I was getting closer to the end, I wanted to make sure that I didn't have too many splotchy parts of different types of like where the shadows were throughout the whole night. So I wanted to kind of pull it all together to make it kind of feel as close as I could to the current state of where the moon was. At this point, thought I'd try softening things out a little bit with the smudge tool, just to see what it would do. Like I said, I'm kind of new in terms of getting back into observational sketching like this, and so I find it fun to just like kind of play around with different things. Personally, I feel like maybe I shouldn't have done that, just because I do like the textural quality of the lines a little bit more. So softening things out, it's not in my nature. Figure I'd give it a shot. But after doing it, it's sort of like, well, okay, now I need to kind of refine back a little bit some of the detail. I feel like I'm missing a little bit too much. It feels a little too soft. So just getting through some of the last bits of highlighting here and getting pretty close to the end of feeling like this is about as far as I want to go with these craters for this sketch. Right now, I'm just kind of like getting a few more of those defined variations in on that flat plane as well. And that's about it. Overall, it was a fun experience playing around with just pencil for the night. I think that I definitely want to continue exploring some more of these lunar sketches, try and amp up my skills, and hopefully the next one won't turn out looking like a cat with an eye patch.